Welcome, everybody, and thanks so much for being here today. I recognize a lot of names from the first one of these series that we did back in December. So very pleased that those of you who attended before decided to come back. And to those of you who are new, that is also wonderful. We appreciate you joining us. This will be a monthly ongoing thing, so do look out for our emails, and we'd love to have you join whenever the topic is of interest to you, or perhaps it will be every time, which is our hope. So what we'll be covering today are features that cover learner onboarding to Riipen. We're going to go over all the different options that are currently available for learner onboarding and why you might choose one particular option over another. We'll demo several of those, and then we'll have opportunity for Q&A on those features. We'll also talk about matchmaking supportive features, the things that make your life easier when interacting with employers in the marketplace, demo a couple of those, and then go on to Q&A. If time allows, so depending on how active our question sessions are, we will also talk a little bit about upcoming features at the end. So I've met a lot of you before one-on-one, or certainly seen you on webinars before, but my name is Emily Mashing. I'm the Director of Product at Riipen. And I will let my co-host Jordan introduce himself.
Hey everyone, I'm Jordan. Also nice to see some of you that I've met before on product feedback calls. I'm our CTO and one of our co-founders, and I'm here to help out with any of your technical questions around the platform. Back to you, Emily.
So just actually a quick housekeeping item before we get into content here, and that's just to mention that everyone should please feel very free to use both the chat or the Q&A feature as much as you like. Don't hesitate to, even just use it to introduce yourself or chat with attendees if you'd like, but also to ask questions about the content. But we'll also have opportunities like live Q&A if you prefer as well. So to begin with, one of the reasons we really wanted to host this session is when we launched Riipen 2.0 in April of 2023, we really expanded the number of ways that people can onboard learners to their experiences on Riipen. So we wanted to chat a bit about what some of those new features are and why you'd select a particular option for learner onboarding over another. We've really strived to make learner onboarding as quick and easy as possible so that it can take less than 2 minutes from the administrator end. You have the option to organize learners directly into teams or leave it a little bit more flexible depending on the settings that you choose for your experiences. We're also going to have Jordan speak a little bit more about advanced options, which include integration options and importing learners. So I'll go through some of the more basic options, though all of these are great choices as well. I'll show a couple of slides and then I'll show these live as well. So the first one that I want to mention, because it's historically been our most popular, is passcodes. So what this means is that you would essentially give learners a unique access token that is specifically for your experience. This option basically lets you copy a set of instructions that's unique to your experience and paste that into a learning management system or any other communication channel you have with students, so they can follow a self-guided sign-up pathway, just following these 4 simple steps that you see here at right. This is obviously awesome because it's very quick to do on the administrator side. It requires a little bit of trust in your learners that they can follow those instructions. And there is also that small risk of learners sharing the access token. So in some cases, you would prefer that this not be used if you'd like to have a little bit more security over who's joining the experience. But it's a great option, certainly, for ease of use and getting started quickly. A new option we've introduced in the last year is the ability to have learners request to join an experience. This is a neat option for when, let's say you have like a wide audience of possible participants, but they're not all going to be joining in the end of the day. If it's not like a course where every single learner participates, for example, you can allow learner requests to join an experience so they can read all about it. They can fill in a custom application form, and then you can decide who to accept or decline. This one is slightly more niche. It's great for any program where you do have screening criteria for learners, but for a lot of them where you're admitting a fixed audience, this wouldn't be the option you'd choose. This would be when you do need to collect that screening information before deciding who participates. There's also a very popular option of inviting learners directly to the experience via email. This would then just prompt them to create their own account, but give them direct access to your experience where they can then access all the projects and either start or apply to a project that interests them, depending on your settings. And then last but not least, kind of the most robust option for controlling the learner experience and shortening the number of steps for learners is to invite a learner directly onto a team. So this is obviously the option that like kind of saves learners the most time and effort. And if you know exactly which particular project a student should be working on and with which other students they're working with, then this is the option that we'd always recommend choosing. And our customer support team, who, as I'm sure you all know, are very, very excellent and very supportive, are always happy to help with this process as well. Of course, it's slightly more set up in the beginning, but it does reduce all effort by each individual learner. So before I let Jordan go on to the advanced options, I'm going to show you a little bit of those options live, starting with the access code option. So when I'm logged in here as an educator, and when I'm viewing my experience under the Learners tab, and then under Invite, I'm going to see this option, Copy Instructions. That's where you'll find the instructions that you saw in the screenshot of the presentation. So I can simply copy these and paste them into whatever channel of communication I have with my students. If you prefer not to have that option available, or if you'd like to enable it for the first time, then under Experience Settings and under Learners, I can enable or disable the ability to join via an access code. So if I'd prefer not to have that for security reasons, I can disable that option and hit save. And this is actually also where I'll find that secondary option to enable learner member requests. So that would be letting a learner request to join your experience. That's not on by default, but when it is enabled, I also have the option to say, what screening questions should I ask of learners when they're joining the experience? So in this case, just to like illustrate the possibilities here, I added 2 possible screening questions. What is your student number? Which would require the student to enter a number as their response and only a number. And then a long text question as well. But we do have a huge number of question type options here. Like you could require them to upload a document, answer multiple choice questions, etc. Maybe fill in their preferred date to start, that sort of thing. Anything depending on what the process is for admitting students to the experience. Now, if you'll bear with me a moment here, I do need to switch accounts a couple times to show this properly, but I wanted to briefly show that from the student point of view. So I'm logged in here as a student who's viewing the experience, and I'm not yet a member of it. And because we do have member requests enabled, I can now click on that button in the top right to request to join. And as I mentioned, I can only enter a number into this field, so I would be required to enter a number for that mandatory question. And then I would also be required to provide a text answer here describing why I'm interested. And of course, you can accept or decline based on the quality of text answers as well. And then once I submit that member request to join the experience, that is now going to be something that the educator is notified of and has the ability to accept or decline the learner into the experience based on their responses. So all of my requests, sorry, I think I actually didn't hit submit there at the end properly, but all of my requests from learners to join the experience will be appearing here in the Learner Requests tab, where I'll have the ability to screen and accept or decline a request from the learner to join the experience. And then just referring back to my next option for invite to experience, I won't actually show that one directly because it's really just a matter of sending an email invitation to the experience that the learner accepts. So I can copy and paste in a comma separated list of emails here to invite learners to my experience, or I can add them individually here as well. Or I do have that option that I mentioned is kind of our most recommended for like controlling learner access, which is creating teams directly. So in the event that I am choosing to create teams directly, I would actually be selecting which project I'm creating the team for, assigning the team a name, which they do have the ability to change later. And then I can either select from existing members of the experience, so students who've already joined, already been accepted into the experience, or I can add a new email address of a student who may not yet be a member of the experience yet. On this page, I can add many teams at once to many different projects, or many teams at once all to the same project, depending on the needs of the experience. When I hit save and continue here, I'll just be asked to confirm all the team configurations that I've just set up before I save and finish. I'm not going to do that just now because I've just did that right before this call. But I will show you what that looks like on the learner end when I am invited. So first off, the learner is of course going to get an email notification letting them know that they've been added as a member of the team on that particular project. The email will look a little different depending on if they've already got an account or not. In this case, I did already have one. Oh, sorry about that. Too many account switching this morning. And when I click on that alert that I've been invited to a team on Riipen, it's basically all set up for me. So that is what is particularly nice about this method, is that when I join Riipen and I've now signed in for what in this case would be the very first time, I can see the progress of my existing team. I can see my very first step highlighted for me. I'm already a member of the team. I'm already a member of the experience. There's no further action that the student needs to take in order to join everything. It's all basically laid out for them what their first steps are and what to do next. So great perk of that experience, but again, just want to emphasize the flexibility of other options there too, that you can make that somewhat more of a self-guided process as well. And I'll just stop sharing temporarily and send it over to Jordan for the next couple options.
Emily, do you actually want to bring up the deck just for the next few options as well?
Oh, of course, sorry.
Thank you. Yeah, so I just want to talk about some of the more advanced options that are available for learner onboarding. All of them slightly more technical in nature, but very valuable if you want to take the time to set these up as kind of an initial step. So the very first one is integrations with your learning management system. Now, whether you're using Blackboard, Canvas, Moodle, or some other learning management system, the chances are we probably integrate with it. You might have heard the term LTI tool before. Basically, this is how all these different tools interact with various LMSs. Riipen's no different. You can set Riipen up as an LTI tool, as an LTI provider, as it's actually called within your LMS system. You can usually get your IT team to do that. And then from there, you can basically directly link your Riipen experience to, say, an assignment inside of your Canvas environment, for example. So, you have your course. Within your course, you have multiple assignments. You'll actually be able to create an assignment that's a Riipen assignment and directly link it to your experience. And the nice thing about that is when students are inside of your LMS and they click on that assignment, it'll actually take them straight into Riipen. And it'll single sign on, put them right in, put them into the experience, and away they go. So that is a really, really nice option there. Other more advanced options that we have too are imports as well. Oops. Oh, demo. Well, yeah, we'll go right to, yeah, here we go. Imports, thanks. No, let's go back to imports. Yeah, just really quickly on imports. This is probably the most advanced option that we have here. But what we do allow for really large scale programs where you might have a list of learners from some external system. I mean, it could be your LMS, it could be your student information system, it could be some other intake process you have from learners if you're running a very specific type of experience. You might be able to export a list of those learners and students that you want to actually bring into a particular experience. So we have a fully dedicated import system where if you have a CSV file, you can just import all of your learners extremely easily that way. And it actually works basically the exact same way as you just saw with Emily's demo around the project and team invites. Within these CSV files, you can specify, the project, the team name, and the learner, and have it all just set up for them and just import it once and be done. So those are two nice little options here. So Emily, if you'll give up screen share, I can actually go in and show these very briefly. I know technical integrations don't make for the best, most interesting demos, so I'll try and keep this brief / interesting. So I am signed back in here with Emily's educator account and looking at an experience here. So I'll just highlight where to find some of this stuff if you are interested. So under the settings tab of an experience page, you can go down to the advanced section and go to integrations. Here you'll find the different learning management systems that we do support. If you click on any one of these, it'll actually take you into a help doc that shows you the exact steps that you need to take in order to do this, because all of the actual setup for the LMS integrations via LTI are actually done within the LMS itself. So you'll notice on some of these, some of them will have, you need to get your Canvas administrator to take these first couple steps and do them once. And then every experience you run after that, you can integrate it with kind of the educator side of things. So that is one option. You'll also notice that Canvas is on here twice. I will highlight that we have what we'd call a native integration with Canvas as well. So if you want, you can get your IT administrator to directly integrate Riipen with Canvas as well. And if you do that, you'll actually be able to go into this Canvas integration, and instead of seeing connect in here, you'd see a button that actually says import learners. And you'll be able to just one click import all your learners from your Canvas or Moodle or Blackboard course directly into your Riipen experience. And that's kind of a set it once and forget it type of integration. Would highly recommend if you are bringing in learners, to multiple experiences a lot of the time, and you want to just have them all in at once and not have to go through that sort of like LTI process where the learner goes to your LMS, finds the assignment, then clicks into Riipen. You can just do it all from one click here. I did also talk about imports as well. So the imports tab can be found down here as well. You'll actually see that I have a few test imports actually already set up in here. So if you are interested in the import system, I will warn that it's definitely more advanced, slightly more technical. You have to know a little bit more about like how to edit the CSV file or an Excel file. But if you aren't comfortable with that and are interested, we have a full guide to actually how to do this and how to format your CSV files. We also have a templated file in our help documentation down here too that you can just download and it'll show you exactly what you need to do. But once you have that file, you basically go into here, click new, you upload that file. I'm not going to do that right now. But once you actually upload it, you'll get what we call a pending import. So essentially, it will parse that CSV file for you. It'll pull out all the information and display it back to you so that you can make sure everything looks correct for what you would assume it would have done. So you can see here that I'm, importing one learner named Lisa Simpson, and then it's pending. And then you can click run. And, assuming you have hundreds, if not thousands of learners that you're importing, you'll actually get real-time updates on this page as it processes the actual import itself. So I'll show you a finished import just really quick. You can see here that this is a finished import. I imported 5 records. What I actually did with this one is I've actually imported 2 different teams. I've imported, what I call team 1 with 4 different learners on it, and team 2 with just 1 learner on it. And you can see that they all succeeded as well. But if any import had failed for whatever reason, like say one of the users had an invalid email address or whatever it is, you get the correct error message over here. And what you can actually do is you could filter this list of the different records that you imported into just the potential errored ones, and then just see your errors there, and then try an import again after you fixed those mistakes. And just re-import those existing errored records and not have to go through that whole massive import again. One thing I didn't talk about in the slides, but I will mention here, is there is kind of a third option to integrating to get your learners into Riipen that's even easier than all these things, although it does require the hardest one-time setup that your IT department would definitely need to be involved in. And that is portal or Riipen-wide single sign-on. And what that essentially enables is, if the terms, My Passport or Shibboleth or SAML or SSO mean anything to you, your school probably has a campus-wide single sign-on system that, it doesn't matter what tool a learner is using, they go to it, they see, sign on with X system. Riipen also supports that. And it's actually extremely easy to set up with your IT team. they actually just go into your portal settings and go down to SSO. And all they have to do is actually fill in these 4 fields here with some kind of cryptic, very technical looking things that they'll know what to do. But once you create these on your portal sign up page, you will just see a sign on with X. And that's the easiest way. So when you want your learners to come onto your experience, they go to Riipen, they see sign on with X, and everything looks familiar to them again. So that is the easiest long term. You'll never have to do anything per experience or repeat any steps ever again. It's just a set it once and forget it kind of thing. But those are all the possible integration options. So with that, I will pass back to Emily.
Thank you, Jordan. And I did just want to pause here just to give an opportunity for questions if there are any. You can always feel free to put those in the chat. If there's any questions on any of the learner onboarding options that we showed so far, or also feel free, I know you won't be able to just directly unmute yourselves, but if you use the raise hand feature, I can always unmute you as well. But if there are no questions, we'll assume that we've been extremely clear, and we will have another opportunity for questions again at the end. So what we wanted to speak about next are some of the new matchmaking features that are available. A lot of these have been quite widely adopted, but we do want to make sure they're widely known and also touch on some of the best practices for usage of these features as well. So of course, like everyone is very familiar with Riipen's marketplace and the features that are used within the chat, within the marketplace rather, to make your life easier when finding projects and requesting to match with projects. But we have created a couple of features that allow you to make matchmaking a little bit more efficient and result in a higher quality of matches. So I'll speak to the first 2 of these, which are custom questions and project negotiation. Custom questions is a really critical one. This is basically an extension of a feature we've always had on Riipen to add screening questions for employers, but you now have the ability to add basically very custom question types. For example, you can even require employers to upload a document. You could require employers to answer a multiple choice question or to fill in a date field, for example, similar to the learner member request that I showed earlier. These questions are really, really important, both for like collecting the data that you need in order to evaluate a company or project, but also for screening out companies. So if there's a particular hard requirement, like company budget, company size, who the project contact is, etc., that is an awesome thing to put here because it will stop you from receiving project submissions that are a poor fit because they don't meet one of those criteria. And I will show you how those set up and how those appear to employers as well. The other feature I quickly wanted to mention is project negotiation. This is brand new in Riipen from last year, which is the ability to request a project in the marketplace or receive a request and then actually edit that project. So you can now take a project that you think is like mostly a fit for your experience or getting there, and you can edit it directly to make it a more precise fit for the experience. This is great when, for example, maybe a project is a little bit too advanced or the scope is too broad and you want to narrow it down to be more appropriate for the timeline or the learner's abilities. You can now directly edit that project. The other party can see your edits and can choose to accept or decline the request based on that edited version of the project. And that can be a multi-stage thing with back and forth edits between the 2 parties as well. And before we go to demo, next feature I'll just have Jordan speak to before I show these things.
Awesome, thanks, Emily. Yeah, new with Riipen 2.0 is we introduced this new feature that we call autoresponders. So you'll notice within your experience settings, there's actually a few places that you can write a basically preemptive message that says, whenever this happens, I want to send this message. And the most common one for matchmaking is whenever I receive a match request, the first message I want to send has this. I think we all know that, this is a very boilerplate message. Once you've scanned the project and think it's probably a good fit, you probably send the same message over and over, usually looking to book a meeting with the employer to talk through the project scope. That's really why we created these autoresponders, so you can just have that message pre-created, have it sent to them immediately. And the other great thing too is you can put whatever you want in that message. So as you see in the example here, if you want them to book a meeting with you through Calendly, include the link to your Calendly in there, and hopefully they just book straight away and you don't actually have to be worrying about sending messages or booking times back and forth. I'll kick it back to you, Emily.
Thanks, Jordan. So here I've just gone back to my educator account, and I'll go into experience settings and then into match requests to show you where to enable these things. So I'll just first, just to go in the same order as our presentation there, first speak to match request questions. So I mentioned the expanded options here. Here, just for the sake of example, I've added a document type question. So I've made this a required question, and in order to answer the question, the employer needs to upload a document. This is obviously a pretty stringent screening requirement, but we do see in like data analysis type courses, getting that data set from the employers is so critical to making the decision about whether to work together. This can be a really good screening criteria to add into the request process. I've also added a couple checkbox type questions for the sake of example. These I think are really, really valuable, again, just for that step of screening out employers. So letting them know what your expectations are and making them check off that they are able to meet that expectation before they submit a project. And then last but not least, again, just to show kind of the breadth of question types available, I did add a multiple choice question, and we do have the ability to add like an other option where the user includes a text option as well. So to give you an idea of where these show up, of course, they are visible to the employer before the employer submits their request. So they're visible on the experience page itself under the description, so they know your expectations before they go to submit a project. And then as well, when the employer is actually going on to submit their project to your experience, which I will just show quite quickly here. This is how those questions will show up to them here. So before they are even able to put in their project for your consideration or create a message thread between you two, they do need to provide the document that is a required question. They need to check off both required checkbox questions and answer the multiple choice question as well before they go on to submit their project to you. So here I will actually just speak to that next thing as well, which is content negotiation. So in this particular example, I'm the employer creating the request, but the same thing applies here, that I can edit my own project. So any changes that I'd like to make, new task here, maybe I'd like to reduce the scope a little bit further. Maybe I'd like to remove my nice to have requirement, etc. But just to make the project scope a little bit different for this particular match in order to tailor it for the experience that I'm submitting to, as the employer, I can do that too. So I'm just going to go ahead and submit my request to work with this educator. And you'll see that every change that I've made to the project content has been tracked. So in the same way as if the educator were the one to make these changes to the project, those are highlighted as additions or removals from the project. Those changes are tracked here too. The educator is then able to go on and propose further changes to the project. The employer could counter those with their own changes, etc. Those changes are only going to be locked into the content once both parties have accepted them. And once they are accepted, that's the project content that students will see. So students will only see that final edited version with input from both parties. And then last but not least on matchmaking features, I'll just go back to my experience settings here. Just to show you here under settings and then match requests, this is where you can add those match request messages that Jordan was mentioning. So these are quite generic examples here. A great example is what Jordan mentioned around including like a calendar booking link or including expectations about what the first steps will be for reviewing the match request. And then once the match is actually accepted, there's another opportunity for an automated message, which is a great opportunity to tell them something about what the beginning of the process will look like with students, for example. These can be, of course, left blank and you can customize your communication with employers. But when you have a lot of employers to deal with, or you just want to make sure they get a generic piece of communication in a short term, adding these auto messages is a great way to do that. So that is it for the demo portion. And if there are any questions, we have been informed our chat is disabled, and I apologize for that. It looks disabled on my end. I've been hunting for, or sorry, it looks enabled on my end, I should say. I've been hunting for that setting and cannot find where to turn that off while the session is running. So I'll ask you, if you don't mind, to please go ahead and use the Q&A if there is anything that you'd like to ask a question about or comment on. And then also, please feel free to raise your hands too if there is anything that would be easier to discuss live as well.
There was one previous question that I provided a written response to, but maybe just to talk more about it. Michelle is asking if learners are already in the system, via SSO or, any other way of getting them in, and the educator themselves wants to assign their learners to project, would they still need to follow the steps of, assigning the teams and all that? To which I wrote yes, with one caveat, in that you can actually change the way that teams are created. Once learners are inside the experience, there is a setting on Experience Settings Teams tab. There's a question that poses, how will learners be assigned to projects? And there's actually 3 options. One is by administrator. So that's you, the educator, saying, I am assigning the learners to specific projects and only I can do that. There's a second option that's called self-assign, which basically is once a learner is in, they can find their project themselves and click, form my team, and form it with all the other learners that are in their group or by themselves if they want. And the third option, which is probably not as applicable here, but I'll mention it anyway, is by application. You can actually set up your experience so that once learners come into it, they actually have to apply to the projects instead of just starting them or being assigned to them. And when they do apply to them, they can apply in teams again. There can be screening questions set by the employer or set by you, the educator. And those applications are actually reviewed by the employer partner themselves. And so in that scenario, they're kind of picking which teams that they specifically want to work with. That one's a bit more niche, but I just want to make sure that people knew of all 3 options that were available. I don't see any other questions coming in, Emily.
All right. All right, for now then, since we do have a little extra time, I won't use all of it. Happy to give everybody a little bit of time back, but I did throw in this extra slide here just to give us the opportunity to speak a little bit more with a future focus and let you know some of what's to come. So a couple features that are related to what we've shown today that I really wanted to highlight just to let you know about, and there will certainly be deeper sessions on them once these features are available or close to available. First off is that one of the things that we're currently working on is a new feature to dynamically generate recommended actions for users in their dashboard. This is going to apply in a couple different contexts, but first and foremost, very relevant for learners when they're completing their projects. One thing that we heard from learners in recent feedback calls is they're looking for more specific guidance on what should I be doing first and what should I be doing next within my project. So we're dynamically creating those tasks based on what the user has and hasn't done so far within the platform. A little bit of a more sophisticated version of what you saw on that kind of step-by-step tracker on the top of the learner dashboard, an overhauled version of that. And then similarly, we do have the same feature coming for educators as well, which will be very relevant for working with learners at scale because it will allow us to dynamically generate recommended actions to intervene with specific teams. You can, of course, dismiss those if it doesn't work with your existing processes, but the ability to identify a team may need a little bit of extra help or an extra oversight based on a low survey submission score or a late submission, missed deadline, etc. Then on the matchmaking side of things, 2 upcoming features I wanted to mention are that we are implementing another AI-based feature. As you may know, we do have the ability for employers to create projects with AI, and we also use AI to automatically review and give feedback to employers on projects. These 2 things have been quite successful, and projects that have undergone these things have a higher than average match rate. But we are taking that a step further to actually score the quality of a match request using AI. So this will be something that's available to both educators and employers in the match request process to say, hey, how good of a match is this before I submit it and suggest changes to the project content accordingly. And then also, once you've received a match request, to actually score the quality of that request as well. And then last but not least, reputation scoring. Name perhaps to be refined here a little bit. But I do want to mention that one thing we often hear about is when you're interacting with an employer or vice versa, as an employer interacting with an educator, you'd really love to know things like how quickly does this educator respond? How likely are they to let how likely is this employer to just let my request expire, et cetera. So these pieces of information will feed into something a little bit extended upon from our existing rating system to let users know what to expect of each other in the marketplace and basically incentivize those behaviors we want to see from each other, including really good quality communication. So I'll leave that there. And of course, if there are any questions on those upcoming features, please do feel free to throw those into Q&A as well.
There is one Q&A question. Michelle's asking, are the steps predefined currently, or do I need to set these up as the administrator? If there is guidance on this part, would appreciate any written materials or videos. I'm assuming Michelle's talking about the steps of learner onboarding. Emily, do you want to take a crack at that?
Sure, I'd love to. And yeah, Michelle, please correct us if you're speaking of something else, but about learner onboarding, this is all pretty well documented. So first of all, once the experience gets close to its start date, you'll receive an automated email reminder, which basically says like, hey, start date coming up soon. Here are your options for onboarding your learners. And if you want to use the instructions, we've actually put the instructions directly in the body of that email for convenience. So in that way, things are kind of handed to you at the right time. But we also do always have our customer success team meeting with the educator before the experience starts as well, and they're able to provide maybe more nuanced recommendations and perhaps comparison between the different options in order to recommend a particular method of learner onboarding. And in that case, we do certainly have them all documented, so we'll be able to send you help documentation based on the option that you've selected, or for all of them to let you make the choice from there.
Looks like we got the right answer. Awesome. I think that's it for Q&A then.
All right, that's great. Well, 5 minutes early, I think, is pretty good timing for us. And of course, if you do have any questions later, please feel free to shoot us an email. I will mention that I'm going on maternity leave on Friday. So this will be my last product webinar for a little while. So please feel free to email Jordan. Jordan will be your go-to point person on these sessions for the next 8 months. And we also actually have our new senior product manager, Shikufe, on this call as well. You'll all be getting to know her too as she begins to sit in on these and contribute to the product communications. So that's jordan@riipen.com for anyone who would like to contact him, but we're also going to send out our product newsletter as a recurring thing as well, which will have access to where to give feedback and ask questions. Thank you very much, everybody, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thanks, everyone.